50,000 fans filled the Seoul Olympic Stadium, their light sticks glowing like stars as the world-famous K-pop group ECLIPSE performed before a sold-out crowd. Fireworks exploded above the stage while Kang Ji-hoon, the group's leader, smiled brightly at his cheering fans. To everyone watching, it looked like another perfect night. But behind the stage, everything was about to change. A security guard suddenly collapsed to the floor. The emergency lights flickered, casting long shadows across the empty hallway. The atmosphere turned silent. A masked man stepped out of the darkness, gripping a sharp knife as he quietly moved toward Ji-hoon. Before anyone could react, the attacker rushed forward. Ji-hoon froze, unable to move. Just as the knife was about to reach him, a young woman dressed in black launched herself through the air. With one powerful spinning kick, she knocked the attacker into the wall. The knife slid across the floor as the man cried out in pain. Before Ji-hoon could understand what had happened, another masked attacker charged toward the mysterious woman. She calmly dodged his punch, grabbed his wrist, and threw him over her shoulder. Within seconds, 3 attackers lay unconscious on the floor. More footsteps echoed through the hallway. The woman stood protectively in front of Ji-hoon without showing the slightest fear. Keeping her eyes fixed on the approaching danger, she calmly said, "Stay behind me." Everything faded to black. 3 months earlier, none of this had even crossed Amina Bello's mind. She had traveled to South Korea with only one dream: to earn her master's degree, make her family proud, and return home to Nigeria. Becoming the secret bodyguard of Korea's biggest celebrity was the last thing she ever imagined. Back in Lagos, Nigeria, the city was already alive before sunrise. Cars filled the busy roads while traders arranged fruits and vegetables along the streets. Students hurried to schools and universities, determined not to be late. Inside a modest apartment, Amina Bello began another day exactly as she always did. Before opening a single textbook, she trained. Standing barefoot on a small training mat, Amina tightened the belt around her taekwondo uniform. Her younger cousin stood opposite her, holding a kicking pad with both hands. Amina took a deep breath and delivered a lightning-fast kick that echoed through the room. Again and again. Every movement was controlled, precise, and powerful. Sweat rolled down her face, but she never slowed down. Discipline had shaped every part of her life. People often believed she loved fighting, but that wasn't true. She trained because she never wanted to be helpless. She believed strength wasn't about hurting others. It was about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. After training, she changed into casual clothes, packed her laptop into her backpack, and headed to university. Her dream was much bigger than sports. She wanted to build a career in international security and one day use her knowledge to make the world a safer place. That afternoon, as she walked across campus checking emails on her phone, one message stopped her in her tracks. It was from Seoul National University. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "Congratulations! You have been awarded the Global Security Leadership Scholarship." She read the words again and again, hardly believing they were real. Tears slowly filled her eyes as she covered her mouth in disbelief. For years, she had worked tirelessly toward this moment, and now her dream was finally becoming reality. She immediately called her mother. The moment her mother answered, Amina struggled to hold back her tears. "I got it." For a brief second, there was silence. Then joyful crying filled the phone. Her family had sacrificed so much to support her education, and now those sacrifices had finally paid off. A few weeks later, Amina boarded a plane bound for South Korea. As the aircraft landed at Incheon International Airport, she looked out of the window at the endless city lights stretching across Seoul. Everything looked different from home. The buildings were taller, the streets were quieter, and the cool autumn breeze welcomed her as she stepped outside with only one suitcase and countless dreams. Looking around with excitement, she smiled softly and whispered to herself, "New country, new beginning." The following day, after settling into her dormitory, Amina decided to explore the neighborhood and buy a few groceries. She enjoyed the peaceful walk, taking in the unfamiliar sights and sounds of Seoul. But that peaceful afternoon was suddenly interrupted by terrified screams. A frightened woman ran out of a nearby convenience store while two masked robbers burst through the entrance carrying bags filled with stolen cash. Panic spread through the street as people rushed to safety. One of the robbers shoved an elderly man to the ground before attempting to escape. Without thinking twice, Amina dropped her shopping bags. She sprinted toward the robbers. The first man swung a metal bar at her, but she ducked beneath it effortlessly before delivering a precise kick that sent the weapon flying from his hand. The second robber charged toward her, hoping to overpower her with his size. Instead, Amina stepped aside, swept his legs from beneath him, and pinned him to the ground until the police arrived. Within moments, officers arrested both criminals. The crowd erupted into applause. Several people had recorded the entire fight on their phones, amazed by the courage of the young Nigerian student who had stopped two armed robbers without hesitation. By evening, videos of the incident had spread across social media. Millions of people watched as Amina calmly defeated the criminals with remarkable skill and composure. Inside Starwave Entertainment, the company that managed Korea's biggest K-pop stars, executives gathered around a conference table watching the viral video. Manager Park Min-seo replayed the footage several times, studying every movement. He asked quietly, "Who is she?" An assistant searched through the information and answered, "Her name is Amina Bello. She's 23 years old, originally from Nigeria, currently studying for a master's degree in international security at Seoul National University. She's also a former national taekwondo and boxing champion." Before anyone could say another word, another employee rushed into the room with an anxious expression. "Director Park Ji-hoon has received another anonymous death threat." The room immediately fell silent. Min-seo looked back at the screen where Amina's fight continued to play. A slow smile appeared on his face. "I think we've just found the person who can protect him." When Park Min-seo finished watching the viral video for the fifth time, he made a decision that would change several lives forever. Within hours, Amina Bello received an email requesting her presence at Starwave Entertainment, one of South Korea's biggest entertainment companies. At first, she assumed it was a mistake. She had never auditioned for anything, never dreamed of working with celebrities, and certainly never expected a famous entertainment company to contact a foreign student. Curious, she accepted the invitation. The next morning, she stood in front of Starwave's towering glass headquarters. Fans crowded outside the building, hoping to catch a glimpse of their favorite idols. Security guards carefully controlled the entrance while reporters waited with cameras pointed toward the doors. Amina adjusted the strap of her backpack and quietly walked inside. She was escorted to a conference room where Park Min-seo waited with two security executives. Their expressions were serious from the moment she entered. After exchanging greetings, Min-seo got straight to the point. "Amina Bello, we've watched your bravery, your discipline, your ability to stay calm under pressure. Those are qualities that can't be taught." Amina smiled politely. "Thank you, sir." He slid a confidential folder across the table. "We need your help." She opened it slowly. Inside were dozens of photographs. Most of them showed one person, Kang Ji-hoon, leader of ECLIPSE, international superstar. Several newspaper headlines were attached beneath the photos. Anonymous threat against K-pop idol. Security breach during fan meeting. Suspicious package sent to Starwave. Another death threat received. Amina's smile disappeared. Park Min-seo leaned forward. "Someone is trying to get close to Ji-hoon. We've increased security. We've hired professionals. But every time we close one hole, another one appears." He paused before continuing. "We don't believe the danger is coming from outside. We believe someone is helping the attacker from inside." Amina remained silent. "We can't trust everyone. We need someone nobody knows. Someone who doesn't look like a bodyguard." He looked directly into her eyes. "We want you." The room became completely silent. Amina blinked several times before answering. "I'm only a student. I've never worked as a bodyguard." Min-seo smiled. "That's exactly why you're perfect. You haven't been trained to think like ordinary security. You think differently. You react differently. And nobody knows who you are. He offered her a temporary contract. Her mission sounded simple. Pretend to be a language and cultural assistant assigned to Ji-hoon's team. Secretly protect him. Report anything suspicious. Tell nobody. Not even Ji-hoon. Amina looked at the contract for a long moment. She had come to Korea to study, not to protect celebrities. Finally, she spoke. I'll do it. The following afternoon, Park Min-seo took her backstage at one of ECLIPSE's rehearsals. Music echoed through the massive dance studio. 6 members practiced synchronized choreography while trainers shouted corrections. Ji-hoon stood at the center. Even during rehearsal, his movements were almost perfect. When the song ended, sweat covered his forehead. He reached for a bottle of water. Park Min-seo approached him. Ji-hoon, I'd like you to meet someone. Ji-hoon looked over with little interest. This is Amina. She'll be assisting the team for a while. Ji-hoon barely nodded. Another assistant? He had seen dozens. They never last. Without another word, he walked away. Amina raised an eyebrow. So, he's friendly. Park Min-seo laughed nervously. He'll grow on you. Over the next few days, Amina quietly observed everything. She noticed that Ji-hoon almost never ate full meals. He barely slept. He smiled for cameras even when he looked exhausted. Every hour of his life was scheduled. Managers, stylists, dance rehearsals, recording sessions, television appearances, fan meetings, interviews, commercial shoots. Every minute belonged to someone else. Late one evening, rehearsal finally ended. The members left one after another. Ji-hoon stayed behind alone, sitting on the stage staring into the empty arena. Amina happened to walk past. You should go home. He didn't even look at her. You sound just like everyone else. She shrugged. I'm only saying you're tired. I'm fine. No, you're pretending to be fine. For the first time, Ji-hoon looked directly at her. Most people treated him like a superstar. She treated him like an ordinary person. He wasn't sure whether that annoyed him or impressed him. The next morning, Amina accompanied the team to a television interview. Hundreds of fans surrounded the entrance. Security struggled to control the crowd. As Ji-hoon stepped from the van, screaming fans pushed against the barriers. Autograph books, phones, cameras. Everyone wanted to get closer. Amina carefully watched every face. Most people looked excited. One person didn't. A man wearing a baseball cap wasn't watching Ji-hoon. He was watching the security guards, studying them, counting them. Amina immediately became alert. The man slowly reached inside his jacket. Without hesitation, she pushed through the crowd. Excuse me. The man noticed her approaching. He turned and disappeared into the crowd before she could reach him. She searched everywhere. He was gone. Minutes later, security searched the area. Nothing. No suspect. No weapon. No evidence. That evening, Amina couldn't stop thinking about him. Something felt wrong. This wasn't random. Someone was testing the security. Someone was waiting for the perfect opportunity. Back at Starwave, Park Min-seo listened carefully as she explained everything she had seen. When she finished, he nodded slowly. I was afraid you'd say that. He opened another confidential file. Inside were photographs of the same man appearing outside 3 different ECLIPSE events over the past month. Always watching. Never approaching. Always disappearing. This isn't over, Min-seo said quietly. It's only beginning. Meanwhile, somewhere inside the Starwave building, an unknown employee secretly copied Ji-hoon's schedule onto a flash drive before sending it to an anonymous contact. The message contained only 5 words. The bodyguard has arrived. The reply came seconds later. Continue the plan. Far away, a man dressed in black smiled as he read the message. Victor Kane had just learned that someone new was protecting his target. He welcomed the challenge. The following week became the busiest period of Amina's life. Balancing her university lectures with her secret assignment was exhausting, but she refused to complain. Every morning she attended classes, and every afternoon she reported to Starwave Entertainment. The company had quietly arranged her schedule so she could continue her studies while keeping a close watch on Ji-hoon. Although Ji-hoon still acted as though he didn't need protection, Amina noticed something others overlooked. Whenever the cameras disappeared, so did his smile. Behind the confident performances was a young man carrying the weight of millions of expectations. One rainy evening, the members of ECLIPSE finished recording a television show much later than expected. As they prepared to leave, Ji-hoon insisted on walking out through the back entrance to avoid the crowd of waiting fans. Amina immediately objected. "The front entrance is secure." Ji-hoon sighed impatiently. "And the back entrance is faster." "Faster doesn't always mean safer." He shook his head and walked away anyway. Realizing she wasn't going to change his mind, Amina quietly followed him. The narrow alley behind the studio was unusually quiet. Rain fell steadily as the black company van waited nearby. Ji-hoon had barely taken a few steps when a delivery motorcycle sped toward him at an unnatural speed. Something felt wrong. The rider wasn't slowing down. "Amina!" one of the security guards shouted. Without hesitation, Amina grabbed Ji-hoon by the shoulder and pulled him backward just as the motorcycle sped past, missing him by only a few inches. A metal object fell from the rider's jacket before the motorcycle disappeared into the traffic. Everyone froze. A security officer picked up the object. It wasn't a weapon. It was a small camera. Someone had been recording Ji-hoon's movements. Park Min-seo immediately ordered a full investigation, but the rider was never found. That night, Ji-hoon sat quietly inside the company van. For the first time since they met, he looked at Amina differently. "You saved me." Amina smiled slightly. "I was doing my job." "No. You were doing more than your job. It could have hit you too." She looked out of the window at the rain. "My father always taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to protect someone even when you're afraid." Ji-hoon remained silent. For the first time in years, someone had protected him without asking for fame, money, or recognition. Days later, the atmosphere inside Starwave seemed almost normal again. Rehearsals continued, interviews resumed, and preparations began for ECLIPSE's biggest concert of the year. But beneath the surface, danger continued to grow. While reviewing security footage late one night, Amina noticed something strange. Every time Ji-hoon's schedule changed, someone outside the company seemed to know almost immediately. That wasn't possible. Only a handful of employees had access to those schedules. Someone inside Starwave was leaking confidential information. Determined to uncover the truth, Amina began paying closer attention to everyone around her. She observed assistants, security officers, stage managers, and office staff. Most of them behaved normally, but one employee always seemed nervous whenever security discussions took place. Before she could investigate further, another incident occurred. During dance rehearsal, one of the massive stage lights suddenly came crashing down. "Watch out!" Amina shouted. She lunged forward, pushing Ji-hoon out of the way just before the heavy equipment smashed onto the stage floor. The entire studio fell silent. Everyone stared at the shattered lighting equipment. Technicians rushed over. "The safety cable was cut," one of them whispered. "It didn't break. It was cut." The realization sent chills through the room. This wasn't an accident. Someone wanted Ji-hoon dead. That evening, Park Min-seo called an emergency meeting. "No one leaves this building until every employee has been questioned." Hours passed. No evidence. No confession. No answers. As everyone prepared to leave, Amina noticed a cleaner quietly collecting trash near the conference room. It seemed ordinary, until she saw him slip a folded piece of paper into another employee's hand. The exchange lasted less than 2 seconds. The cleaner walked away as though nothing had happened. Amina immediately followed him. He entered a storage room. She quietly opened the door. Empty. Only a small open window remained. He had escaped. Looking around the room, she noticed something lying beneath a shelf. A disposable mobile phone. She picked it up carefully. Seconds later, it vibrated. A message appeared on the screen. "The concert is in 3 days. Everything is ready." Her heartbeat quickened. She showed the phone to Park Min-seo. His face turned pale. They're planning something during the concert. The police traced the phone, but it had already been disconnected. Meanwhile, somewhere in an abandoned warehouse outside Seoul, Victor Kane stood before several masked men. On a large screen behind him appeared a blueprint of the Seoul Olympic Stadium. He smiled confidently. For months, they've strengthened security. They've hired more guards. They've installed more cameras. He paused before pointing toward one section of the stadium. But every security system has one weakness: the human factor. One masked man asked quietly, "And the new bodyguard?" Victor smiled. "She thinks she's protecting him. Soon she'll realize she's exactly where I wanted her to be." Across the city, Amina sat alone in her dorm room, unable to sleep. She replayed every event in her mind: the anonymous threats, the mysterious man in the baseball cap, the falling stage light, the secret phone, and the growing feeling that someone very close to Ji-hoon was helping the attackers. She looked out at the city lights shining through her window. Only 3 days remained before the concert. Deep inside, she knew one thing with absolute certainty: the next attack wouldn't be a warning. It would be the real attempt. Only 3 days remained before ECLIPSE's biggest concert of the year, but inside Starwave Entertainment, no one felt excited anymore. Every smile seemed forced, and every security officer looked over their shoulder. Amina barely slept, replaying every clue in her mind. She knew the attackers had been planning something for months, and now the final move was close. The morning of the concert finally arrived. Outside the Seoul Olympic Stadium, tens of thousands of fans lined the streets wearing ECLIPSE merchandise and waving glowing light sticks. Television crews broadcast live while helicopters circled overhead. To the fans, it was the biggest concert of the year. They had no idea that hidden among the crowd were people preparing to destroy everything. Backstage, Ji-hoon adjusted his microphone while the stylists made their final checks. The other members of ECLIPSE joked with one another to calm their nerves, but Amina remained focused. Her eyes constantly scanned the corridors, the security doors, and every unfamiliar face. Ji-hoon walked over to her. "You've been serious all morning." Amina answered quietly. "Because I don't think today is going to end the way everyone expects." Before he could reply, Park Min-seo entered the room. "Listen carefully. Nobody leaves this area alone. Stay with security at all times. If anything looks suspicious, report it immediately." Everyone nodded. The countdown began. 5 minutes. 3 minutes. 1 minute. The stage lights exploded to life. The music started. ECLIPSE ran onto the stage as over 50,000 fans screamed with excitement. For almost 20 minutes, everything went perfectly. Then suddenly, the lights went out. The music stopped. The stadium fell into confusion. Emergency lights flickered on backstage, painting the hallways in dim red light. Amina's instincts immediately took over. She heard running footsteps. Not one person. Several. A group of masked men burst through a backstage entrance, overpowering 2 security guards before charging toward Ji-hoon. "Stay behind me," Amina shouted. The first attacker swung a metal baton. She blocked it, twisted his wrist, and kicked him backward into a stack of equipment. Another rushed toward her with a knife. She sidestepped him, disarmed him, and slammed him onto the floor. A third attacker grabbed one of the ECLIPSE members from behind. Without hesitation, Amina threw a nearby equipment case into the attacker's legs, causing him to lose balance before pulling the frightened member to safety. The other members quickly gathered together behind security. Hyun-woo looked at Amina in disbelief. "I knew you were good. But this is like watching an action movie." Even in the middle of danger, Amina couldn't help smiling for a second. More attackers flooded the hallway. Security alarms echoed throughout the stadium. Backstage had become a battlefield. In the confusion, one masked man grabbed Ji-hoon and tried dragging him toward a service exit. "No!" Amina sprinted after them. She leaped over a fallen speaker, tackled the attacker to the ground, and pulled Ji-hoon free. Then, a calm voice echoed through the corridor. "Enough." Every attacker stopped. A tall man dressed in black slowly removed his mask. Victor Kane. He smiled confidently. I've spent months planning today. And one bodyguard isn't enough to stop me. Amina stepped forward. As long as I'm standing. You're not touching him. Victor laughed. You still don't understand. He slowly looked toward the backstage offices. You've been searching for the traitor. He's already done his job. At that exact moment, security officers stormed the logistics office after tracing confidential files. One of Starwave's senior logistics employees was caught copying Ji-hoon's schedules, rehearsal times, hotel information, and security routes. For months, he had secretly been working for Victor Kane in exchange for money. The traitor was arrested immediately. Victor's smile slowly disappeared. His entire operation had collapsed. Realizing there was no escape, Victor attacked Amina himself. The hallway erupted into one final fight. Victor was stronger. Amina was faster. Every punch echoed through the corridor. Every kick pushed Victor farther back. He swung wildly. Amina ducked. She blocked another strike, twisted his arm, used his own momentum against him, then delivered one final spinning kick that sent Victor crashing onto the floor. Before he could stand again, security officers surrounded him with weapons drawn. It ends here, Amina said calmly. Victor looked up in defeat. For the first time, he had lost. Within minutes, police officers arrived and arrested Victor, his remaining men, and the Starwave employee who had betrayed everyone. Slowly, calm returned backstage. Although the concert had been interrupted, Ji-hoon insisted on returning to the stage. Park Min-seo hesitated. Are you sure? Ji-hoon smiled. My fans have been waiting. I'm not ending tonight with fear. Minutes later, ECLIPSE returned to the stage. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause. Nobody in the audience knew how close they had come to losing their favorite idol. The concert ended with tears, laughter, fireworks, and unforgettable memories. Months passed. Life slowly returned to normal. Amina continued her master's degree while Starwave strengthened its security. Although her secret assignment had officially ended, she often visited the company. This time, not as a bodyguard, as a friend. Whenever she entered the practice room, the members of ECLIPSE immediately welcomed her. Hyun-woo grinned the moment he saw her. Everyone hide. Our bodyguard is here to inspect us. The room burst into laughter. Another member jokingly asked if she could teach them how to throw a punch. One challenged her to a playful arm wrestling match and lost almost instantly. Another secretly handed her a bag of Korean snacks, saying, "This is your payment for saving us." Even Park Min-seo smiled more often whenever Amina visited. The company that had once hired her as a stranger now treated her like family. One afternoon, after completing their world tour, Ji-hoon invited the entire group, their manager, and Amina to celebrate at a quiet Korean barbecue restaurant. For the first time. No cameras. No reporters. No bodyguards. No screaming fans. Just friends sharing food, laughing, teasing one another, and telling embarrassing stories from the tour. Hyun-woo raised his glass. To Amina, the only person crazy enough to fight criminals before even learning our names. Everyone laughed loudly. Ji-hoon looked across the table at Amina. For the first time in months, his smile wasn't for the cameras. It was real. After dinner, he asked if she would take a walk with him along the Han River. The city lights reflected beautifully on the water. A cool evening breeze carried golden autumn leaves across the riverside. Neither of them spoke for a while. Finally, Ji-hoon broke the silence. You know, this is the first time we've walked together without someone trying to attack me. Amina laughed. I definitely prefer it this way. Ji-hoon stopped walking. He looked at her sincerely. I've met millions of fans. Hundreds of celebrities. But very few people ever cared about me more than my fame. You did. Thank you for protecting my life. Amina smiled warmly. I was only doing what anyone should do. Ji-hoon gently shook his head. No. You gave me something I haven't had in years. Peace. They continued walking side by side beneath the glowing city lights, not as an idol and his bodyguard, but as two ordinary people whose lives had changed forever. Sometimes, the greatest love stories don't begin with flowers. Sometimes, they begin with courage. Sometimes, they begin with sacrifice. And sometimes, the person sent to protect your life becomes the one who changes it forever. Thank you so much for watching The Idol's Secret Bodyguard. If this story made you smile, kept you on the edge of your seat, or touched your heart, please support Afrikora Studios by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on the notification bell so you never miss our next Afro-Korean animated movie. Now it's your turn. Should Amina, Ji-hoon, Hyunwoo, Park Min-seo, and the rest of ECLIPSE return in Part 2? Would you like to see what happens when a new international enemy targets the group during their world tour, and watch Amina face an even greater mission? Or would you prefer a brand new Afro-Korean story with completely new characters? Comment Part 2 if you want this story to continue, or comment New Story if you'd like us to create something completely different. Your comments will decide what Afrikora Studios brings to life next. Until then, stay safe, keep dreaming, and we'll see you in our next adventure.